This might look like an ordinary cactus, but it's not. However, just like a real cactus, it's adapted for hot summer days. So, a 3D printable bunny ear cactus with removable ears that can act as coasters. A brilliant idea, but unfortunately, it isn't mine. So there are many variations of plant coasters out there, but I like the idea and the design so much that I wanted to make my own. And in this video I will share with you my story on how I go from idea to reality. I hope you enjoy. As always, I start my modeling with a reference image. This is something I always do when I try to emulate something real. It's easy and yield good results. While working on the model, I'm also thinking ahead to the printing process. This is an important skill to learn when designing with 3D printing in mind. I constantly ask myself key questions like, what's the optimal orientation for the print? Will the design require supports? Where are the overhangs? Etc. And by thinking about these factors during the modeling phase, I can design the model in a way that ensures a smooth printing process. The biggest challenge in this project, and the most problematic part of the print, is the multicolored cactus ear. I want a green stem with yellow spikes, and some way to attach it to another ear. I want a fast and efficient print with as little post-processing as possible. I want to minimize the use of supports and glue. But is that even possible?
Nothing is impossible!
Okay, thank you, Shia. But I think we need to make some compromises on this print. We have to pick our poison, so to speak. We could easily print this so that we get zero post-processing work. But if I want two colors, the printer will make a color switch on almost every layer, which means a huge waste and some ridiculous print times. Alternatively, we could split the ear in half and print the pieces laying down. This would result in a considerably faster print, but it would also mean we'd have to glue the two halves together, likely leaving some ugly cracks between them. I decided to go with a third option, which I believe will yield the best quality. We'll print the ears standing up with holes in them, then we'll print the spikes separately and glue them on afterwards. This way we can achieve very smooth edges and use a single color printer. Sure, we still have to do a lot of gluing, but as I said, we have to make a compromise somewhere. Another perk with this version is that we can get perfectly round holes for our magnets. Yes, we are using magnets to attach the ears. I thought about this obstacle a lot. And while you can make 3D printable hooks and attachments, which I will be making in another part of this design, magnets are just so clean. And it was important for me that the ears are easy to attach and remove. These bad boys you can just slap on and off effortlessly. So when I decided to go for magnets, it was just a matter of finding the right ones. I wanted something small to keep the coaster nice and thin, but also something strong enough to actually hold the coaster in place. I ended up with these 5mm wide magnets that I found on Amazon. I'll post a link to the magnets that I used down in the description. After experimenting with the strength, I settled with 3 magnets side by side. This gives optimal strength to the snap-on function. Not too weak that the coaster falls off, but also not too strong that it becomes difficult to remove. Easy removal isn't just about how strong the magnets are, it's also about the rest of the cactus. If the base is weak or not secured properly, you'll end up needing 2 hands, and that's actually a big deal. When I think about good design, I think about how people interact with the object. In this case, the user probably has a drink in one hand, and when they go to grab their coaster, they shouldn't have to put down their drink and use both hands to remove a coaster. It should be seamless and easy. Now, some of it is just about having the right technique. When removing an ear, do not drag the ear directly outwards. At this angle, the magnets are strong. Instead, push or pull at a slight angle. I like to add a small twist as well. But not everyone is going to watch a video about proper snap-on technique of a fake cactus coaster. So, to make it as easy as possible for the average user, we need a good base. I started by designing a lump of soil with a slot in it. This is where the base of the cactus will go, kind of like how a N64 cartridge fits into its console. My idea was to design the bottom of the cactus as a squeezable latch. If we look at an X-ray of the soil, we'd see 2 small crevices at the bottom. These allow the latch to expand and lock in place when you let go of the squeeze. And to make the soil look a little bit more realistic, I added some texture to the topography and a few cracks around the slot. I left the bottom of the soil open. Here I'm thinking I can attach some kind of weight if I want a heavier base. Maybe I can just glue a rock onto here or something, if I feel like I need it. I ended up placing 3 stones at the bottom and gluing them in place. It doesn't need to look pretty, as long as it adds weight. This extra weight significantly reduced the wobble when removing a coaster. You can clearly see the improvement in this comparison. The lump of soil goes into these flower pots that I designed. I made one flower pot that was more spacey and artsy. This one was printed in vase mode with some brown reddish PLA. At first I noticed some artifacts, but when I slowed down the print speed, we ended up with an almost perfect print. Vase mode is great for a print like this because it yields smooth results without a seam. However, I did have to use a 0.8mm nozzle to get a thick enough wall. I opted for a 1.2mm wall thickness. This wall thickness provides good stability while still retaining some flexibility. With this thickness, we can easily press the soil down into the pot, and now we have a base. The other pot is a more traditional looking pot that is slightly bigger. It's not printed in vase mode, but I applied some texture with the fuzzy skin setting to hide the seam, and I think it turned out great. Which one do you like the most? With the base done, it was time to test the latch function. I wanted to print everything in PLA, which isn't the most flexible material, so it took a few tries to get the latch working. The latch is a one-way lock, so once you push it in, the only way to remove it is to break it. But you're not supposed to remove it after insertion anyway. The latch isn't very complicated, and it did work fine in all my tests. Sure, the legs were not cooperating during the printing process and did need some extra support beams, but the function worked well until I started printing the real thing. It failed more times than I want to admit. No. I came to the conclusion that it's heavily material dependent, since I had just switched colors. Wetness, age and quality are all things that can affect the flexibility of PLA. But why spend hours trying to fix the perfect latch when you got glue? Stiff as a rock. Now, if you have a keen eye, you might have noticed that there are only 3 removable coasters in the Cactus. And that's because I only have 2 friends. But also, stacking more than one ear on top of each other and things quickly become unstable. And if you grab one, you risk collapsing the whole thing. There are of course ways to avoid the Jenga effect, but this usually means growing the cactus in both length and width. So ultimately I wanted a small and neat cactus that is asymmetrical with the perfect snap-on function, which is why it looks the way it does. If I ever get more friends, I can always make another cactus, and then I'll have 6 coasters. How about that? After completing the cactus and feeling quite good about myself, I couldn't shake the feeling that option 2 just might have been a better choice. You know, the one where the cactus was split in half. So I went back and made that version as well. I removed all the spikes on the sides, I split the cactus in half, and I printed both sides laying down. They turned out quite well. I did have to remove the spikes on the sides, because including them in the print took ages, because it had to change filament on every layer. But despite this, I still think the spikes are an improvement. They came out perfect and they are sturdy. There's no way they will fall off. But as I suspected, we have this visible crack on the side. The finish also looks quite different. I did try the ironing setting, which is supposed to smooth out the top layers, but I don't think I'm getting great results from it. Anyway, I attempted to glue the two halves together, and of course I messed up. I truly hate glue, especially quick bonding super glue. If you have an idea on how to make this design glueless, I'm all ears. It's time for another attempt.
Mission accomplished. Good work.
The new version looks okay, but I'm a bit worried about how the holes for the magnets look. Because of the form and the angle they were printed, I can already tell that it will be a tough fit for the magnets. But with some squeezing and more glue, I think we managed to get okay results. They're definitely not as clean as version 1, and we'll see if this will affect the snap-on function. After a much shorter assembly process, now with a flawlessly working latch for some reason, we finally have an alternative version. I'm still unsure how I feel about it. It's not a huge difference in looks from afar. I do think version 1 looks a little bit better, mostly because of the additional spikes on the side. Also, the snap-on function on version 2 still works, but is definitely weaker because of the worse fit. I made some pros and cons of the two versions, but overall I think the two versions are pretty similar, so the choice ultimately comes down to your printer and how much you dislike using glue. I think no matter how you print it, some post-processing work is inevitable if you want it to look like this. It's not a print farm friendly print, so to speak. Of course, there is an option to just print the cactus in a single color. I printed one ear just to try it out, and while it does solve a lot of our issues, I never pursued this idea further, since I think it just looks too bland. Another similar option is to just print the ears with holes in them. The thing I like about this one is that the coasters end up being a bit flatter and even thinner, which is nice. But of course, it does come out kind of bland since it's just a single color. Personally, I'm currently using version 1. And I have been using it for a few weeks now. During this hot summer, I've been drinking a lot of iced coffee, and having easy access to a coaster has been really nice. I also appreciate having a designated place to store it afterwards. After a few weeks of use, there are some signs of wear, like a few stains here and there, but overall I think it holds up surprisingly well. PLA is quite tough and you can still wash it if you spill something on it. I think this cactus coaster is going to be with me for quite some time. It looks nice and it's quite handy. If you want to print your own cactus coaster, all the files are available on my website frankadrian.art. Thank you to my patrons Temoso, Keita, Jose and Dennis, and thank you for watching.